Hello and welcome to another AMA, this time for March 2022. So let's just hop right into it with the first question from SkyZ Science, which is, do you play any card games or board games besides tabletop RPGs? If so, what are your faves? If not, any you're intrigued by? So I don't really play card games or board games on the regular right now, or even before. I have played stuff obviously like Uno and Goldfish and those types of games. I think Crazy Eights was another one, but nothing along the lines of like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic. I do like to play those types of games when they're brought up, though. It's just because of world events. Haven't really had the chance to hang out with people, so. But in terms of board games, I have had fun playing Monopoly. Yes, Mousetrap in my youth. And speaking of youth, this question unlocked like a memory I had of this Scooby-Doo board game, and I actually looked it up. It was called Scooby-Doo Thrills and Spills, in which the board was like slanted and you had this like spinning top, and if you landed on a bad space, you'd spin the top and it would like hit obstacles and it could hit your pieces down to the bottom. And I remember loving that one. It's probably not that good of a board game now that I'm like thinking about the basic concept, and looking at the map, it was like really short, but I liked that one a lot in my youth. Probably because we usually just played with the spinning top. But anyway, next set of questions comes from Hannah Page. The first question she has is, what was the first M-rated game you've played? I don't think I actually played it, or if I did, it was like a little bit. And this might be a little bit of a, oh my gosh, sort of story, but I'm sure a lot of people have the same experience. When I was like 7 or 8, one of the boys in my grade, which I hung out with a few times, had Conker's Bad Fur Day. So I saw some of that, and I do remember being like fascinated with it. Even though, like, obviously I should not have, been involved in it at all. But I think somebody had a player's guide, like a cousin or that boy or something, and I read it a lot. Like, I was just like, ooh, I've never seen anything like this before. But I feel like I don't remember much of the raunchy side of it, other than like, there's poop or something. Like, what a 7-year-old would focus on. But yeah, that was my first M-rated experience. Next question, also from Hannah, comes from, or says, how do you decide which comic NPCs get placed where? Is it random, or is there a method behind it? And there's not really a method per se. The only real rigid thing is, the tiers. $10 gets like a more in-focus panel and like lines, while $5 right now gets like a background character. Other than that, though, it's just kind of like where I think they'd fit best. For instance, this month had Octopath Comics, and there were a few comic ideas that had scholars. So I tried to place NPCs that had like they were wearing suits or glasses or already, and one of them had like a witch hat, like, oh, that says magic to me, or like more of a studious type, just so they fit in there. Or I know that like some of the references I had for a few of them, they were using magic, so I was like, oh, they're already, a magic user, so I tried to put them in there. For something like the upcoming Paper Mario comics, that would be based on the species that people picked, because certain ideas had certain species. Like, one idea was like, oh, this is focused on something a Babam said in the game, so that would be someone who chose a Babam. But yeah, there's not... It kind of has to be flexible given the way that I do comics, so I can't, like, rigidly promise or put things in place. That said, it can't be completely random either, because I do need certain things in certain places. So the next question from Hannah is, do you dabble with physical media like pens, pencils, etc.? If so, what's your preferred art medium? I haven't in a long while because, one, I don't have a lot of specific space in the place that I live for like an art room, and I live with cats, specifically my roomie's cats, but like a part of me doesn't want to bring out like the acrylics or anything that might be toxic to them at all when they're around, just because like, you know, who knows where they might get to. But also mostly the space, because I'd need like a table to just do it and know that I could get it messy and stuff, and I don't have that. But back in school, I really loved working with traditional media. I don't have a straight up favorite, I'd say, but I do think I remember liking pastels and acrylic paints quite a bit. Next question from Hannah is there a series you've wanted to get into, but the lore, lead-in, amount of material is just too daunting? If so, which one? The best answer I can think to give this question is possibly One Piece, but only sort of. It's one of those things that I feel like could be a fun experience and like is a little bit in my wheelhouse, but not for like 1,000 plus chapters. And people often say like, oh, the length isn't a barrier to entry, but yeah, it is. Because I am a type of person that when I get into something, I do want to get into it with the intent to finish it. Like, there are very few things I have dropped part way. Like, it had to really lose me. So starting anything is a big commitment when you already know that like there's that much content. Because you have to sit down. Like, it's not even something like a Let's Play series that I can put on in the background while I'm like, you know, exercising or something that I can multitask. It's like, nah, I have to sit there and like read it. So, and like, some people might go, oh, you could do the anime instead, but it's like, can I? I'd like to like watch and absorb it if I'm going to do it. So, but the last question from Hannah here is, if you could rewrite a comic of yours and have nobody remember the original, would you take the chance, and which one would it be? And funny thing with this question is, any comics that I could think of where the answer would possibly be yes are ones that are so old that nobody remembers them already. But more in line with the actual question, I'd actually say no. While there are comics I'd look back on and think, like, oh, I could have done that better, I personally don't like to focus on past projects in that kind of way, because it can get way too easily like cyclical, where you go and go, oh, I'll just fix it, and then by the time you have fixed whatever you were doing, if it was like a longer one, you'll look back on the part that you fixed at the beginning and you have improved already, and you're like, oh no, now that part can be improved, and it's just, you repeat it over and over again, and you're just doing the same thing. Instead, I like to take those, I could have done this better thoughts and use those to improve current and new content. Because that, to me, makes a nice little timeline where I can like see my progress improving, and I'm not constantly like stuck on old projects trying to make them as perfect as possible, because like you can't really reach that. So that said, when there's like a long period of time between stuff, like you see people sometimes redo things like after 10 years or like more. That's a little bit different, because that's like such a huge chunk, and if you can do it in a reasonable amount of time, then that's just like a fun revisit. Though even that would be like, I'd have to be specific about stuff like that. So the last set of questions comes from Aquasun. The first question being, what is your favorite seasonal activity, like per season, like sledding, going to the beach, watching leaves fall? For winter, I like watching big fluffy snow when it's falling, and I would like to do more, if not for the fact that winter is when it gets icy and slippery, which I have like a sort of phobia of slipping and falling on ice, so when that happens, I can barely go outside. So that's why I like watching the snow from the safety of my non-slippy house. For spring, going on long walks and seeing things starting to bloom and all that is just so great, especially because the weather is like really perfect for it. For summer, I like to go swimming when I can. The feeling of a warm summer day when you get out of a pool is just like, just perfect. And then for fall, it's kind of the same as spring, where I like to walk around and look at the leaves changing and get some last walks in before I'm locked in my house for winter. It also usually tends to have nice weather for that, so those tend to be my favorite things to do. Next question, also from Aquasun, says, what do you think about the trolley problem? Not just the decision you would make or why, but like, is it an interesting ethical, physiological thought experiment, or is it just a meme? Okay, so answering this question is interesting because I think the trolley problem is an interesting thought experiment in the way that it does get a conversation going and people thinking, but I think the biggest shortcoming, in my personal opinion, is that most of the thoughts for it, at least for me, don't actually revolve around the moral dilemma and more so about the specifics of the situation that's presented. Because rather than just, presenting the you have 5 people you can save or 1 person, choose, there's this whole situation of, you've come across a trolley that's going down a track, or there's a split, and for some reason you're at a lever. Like, I don't know if it's just part of what my brain does, but I'm like, why am I at this lever? Am I in charge of this lever? If I'm in charge of this lever, why? Like, what are the safety precautions for this situation? Why is this a situation in the first place? If there are 5 people on one of the tracks, how are none of them on watch for a trolley? They know what they're doing. They're on train tracks. It is procedure in a lot of places to have people on watch. Like, I've worked at a mine before. There is literally, you have to have someone there that is literally just standing there if you're doing dangerous work, that's watching for things. Like, they're not even helping with anything. They're just on watch. Like, if something goes slightly wrong, they go, okay, guys, drop what you're doing and get out. Like, and then the other thing, why is there 1 person that's alone? Like, it's supposed to be this moral dilemma of like, the lives are in your hands, except it's completely ignoring the agency of the 6 people that are on the tracks that should be, going by safety rules, as well as the agency of whatever company made these people. I think it was like they're doing repairs or something, right? Or something, if that was the situation, or the agency and responsibility of the people in charge of the trolley. And again, am I just some person that walked through the woods and got to this switch and is like, oh, this is happening? How do I even know that the switch is in charge of the trolley's tracks? Can it go halfway? Did I try it out? Is it stuck? But if it's stuck, then that's not on me anymore. Why am I in the forest? I always imagined it as a forest. Like, what? Why is any of this happening? So you can see the thoughts that I have around the trolley problem, where like, if you want to have the moral dilemma be the focus, I say just take the trolley out of it, because people like me are gonna be like, okay, why a trolley though? Like, I hope that answered the question. Anyway, next question, also from Aquasun, is, if you were in an accident and could no longer draw and make visual art, what other activities would you pursue? A harrowing question, especially because it implies a lot of activities would be off the table, because, arms and hands are part of drawing. Because, if it was just my right arm, then I'd probably try to learn with my left. But if that's not an option, I suppose I'd try to take up singing, since I do like that a lot, and it can improve, quite a bit. And it also doesn't require hands or arms. But, that's the first thing that I can think of. And then the last question from Aquasun is, what was the last physical printed on paper book you read? And that was Kiki's Delivery Service. I technically haven't finished it yet, because I really like the book. So now that I'm like at the end, a part of me is like, if I don't read it anymore, it'll never finish. Which is such a weird thought to have, but I don't know. That's just a thought that I've had with it, but I'll finish it eventually. It's been very, very good. I highly recommend if you can go to a bookstore to pick it up. But yeah, that was the last question for this month. So we're going to head over, as usual, to the end credit screen, which has my patrons, my lovely patrons, ticking by. You can see the different comic NPCs displayed on their little name tags there, which, as mentioned by one of the questions, can be seen in my comics every month. That is one of the perks that comes with supporting me. You can actually find out more in the description, links to my Patreon there, as well as other social media, and any links that patrons have provided as well for shout-out purposes. As always, I always thank everybody for supporting me and asking these questions. It is really fun to just kind of sit down and have like a little thought about a few questions here and there, just kind of ramble for a bit, even if I'm bad about recording them on time. This one almost missed the deadline, so to speak, but I did it. I got there with a little bit of luck. But yeah, so thank you for watching, and I will see you next month. Bye.